Good evening, everybody. My name is Jonathan Landsman. I'm our board chair, and tonight is our August general board meeting. Um, so welcome to our board meeting. And I'll go through our agenda. First item is to call us to order, which I've done. Second is to do the Pledge of Allegiance, so we'll stand and do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, when you're ready, Sheila, we'll do roll call.
Mr. Young.
Here.
Mr. Furman.
Present.
Mr. Cohen.
Present.
Mr. Torres provided notice that he would not be in attendance. Pastor Jones.
Present.
Dr. Hans. Ms. Newman.
Present.
Ms. Root. Here. Ms. May. Here. Ms. Woodruff.
Here.
Dr. Giles also provided notice. Mr. Landsman.
Here. So we have a quorum. Thank you. Next, I'll be looking for a motion to approve our meeting agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mokaya. It's been moved and supported. Any comments? Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the agenda say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is public comment. Do we have anyone? First, we'll do remote. Is there anyone remote? No one remote? Okay. We have at least one person for public comment this evening. Come on up, please. Mr. Cummins?
Good evening. Fred Cummins, President of Alliance of Vermillion, Oakland County. I passed this sheet out to you about Ancylosphagnosia, a little hard to pronounce. It has to do with basically people basically aren't really in touch with reality, don't understand their circumstances. There's a serious problem with mental illness. But this takes there's two different videos here, different perspectives. This neurologist is coming from the perspective of people with stroke and how some of them may be paralyzed, like on one side, and not be able to understand that they are paralyzed. They think that they are whole. And for some period of time, and he goes through asking questions of how they're relating. And the lady, he says, "Well, point my nose with your left hand." And she says, "Okay, I'm pointing at it." Pointing to her arm, but she thinks she's pointing at his nose. Anyway, the reason for bringing this up is that that's physical somehow, but it isn't, because when her arm gets better, she gets better. She doesn't have that. There's people who are mentally ill and have anosognosia where they don't understand that they're ill. Somehow they don't seem to get better. So there's a relationship here. And it has to do with functioning of the brain, which we don't understand very well, but I think we ought to be looking more into how these things occur and why and what we can do to help them. I've talked in the past about the book by Dr. Insel about therapy, the importance of therapy, in which we don't pay much attention to, but it is really is important. It has to do with helping the brain fix itself. And the anosognosia, it does fix itself, basically. But the other thing, the second video is about mental illness and anosognosia and how you communicate with people who don't understand they don't have an illness, even though you're looking at it, you have an illness. It doesn't do any good to argue with them. You have to relate to them in a different way. And that has to do with how people who are working with people who are mentally ill, particularly direct care workers, have no idea about this. Nobody talks about this. And it has a good deal to do with how well they get along with the people they're trying to take care of. So there's a research need, and then there's a development training need to be addressed. So this is Dr. Amador's book. It's been around he's wrote a number of versions, been around for quite some time. All right. But people ought to be reading this, particularly people who are working directly with people who are mentally ill.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Appreciate it. The book to read for the summer.
Yeah, 2 videos, not very long.
Okay. Next on our agenda is my favorite section of all of our meetings, which is stories that inspire. And tonight, it's the Director's Award recipient Jeffrey Blake. And remote.
Unfortunately, Jeffrey is not able to attend, but he has provided a synopsis and a acceptance, basically, of his award that he'll be receiving on Thursday, and I'm going to be presenting that this evening.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
Sure, of course. So first of all, I wanted to mention that, as noted, this is Jeffrey. This is a picture of Jeffrey, and he's receiving the Director's Award this year for the annual Your Voice, Your Value conference. And just to give you a little insight about what the Director's Award is, I'm just going to read what that Director's Award synopsis is. And it basically inspires others to strive to be their best advocates for others, and makes their community a better place. The individual has overcome challenges for living with a developmental disability, mental illness, or substance use disorder, and has chosen to use their experience to contribute to others and their community. They embody the characteristics of all the other recognition awards. So this is the highest honor that you can receive in the Achievement Awards. And I'd like to read his nomination. It's a little bit lengthy, but I'm going to read his nomination, and then I'm also going to kind of read his acceptance speech, I want to say. This is something he wrote up because he is nonverbal. So just wanted to be able to share that with everyone. Okay, Jeffrey Blake was referred to Gesher Human Services by MORC and Michigan Rehabilitation Services for customized employment supports. And at the time of his intake, he had many reservations about getting an independent job in the community due to his limited communication. He worked closely with the staff and was willing to try things he had never tried before. He participated in the customized employment, and the staff spent over 30 hours with him trying to figure out his interests, his marketable skills, and conditions that are needed for him to be successful in his employment. And they finally agreed that the best place for him to work would be at a theater, and that would match his skills and his interests. So he submitted several applications and had several interviews, things that were rescheduled. And over the course of a couple of months, he continued to strive to remain upbeat and submit those applications and have those interviews, because his overarching goal was to get a job at a theater. So after a few months of searching, he was finally offered his dream job, and he really aspired to work at one of his favorite theaters, which is MJR. And so at MJR, he assists at the concession stand, and he helps with counting and packaging items. This is a customized job that was actually created for Jeffrey because it increased the efficiency of the concession stand staff, and also allowed Jeffrey to perform tasks that he was good at and to be independent. So he shared his stories of success with others and others that are job seekers at Gesher, and he has demonstrated that despite the obstacles that he faced as an individual with disabilities, he persisted. He was very persistent about getting the job that he wanted, his dream job, and the hope and hard work resulted in achieving his goal. So now I would like to read his, acceptance speech for receiving the award on Thursday. Jeffrey is very grateful and proud to have received the OCHN Director's Award. He completed his post-secondary program in June of 2022 at the height of the pandemic. He very much wanted to go to college, but was unable to find a suitable program because of his intellectual disability. He tried a day program, skill development at then JVS, now Gesher, and didn't really enjoy it. Like many people with disabilities, he preferred being around adults without disabilities. He applied for customized supported employment through JVS, and it took until March of 2021, he was able to get the job with the movie theater MJR in Troy, helping prepare food for the concession. He has a job coach who helps him remain on task and communicate with his coworkers. Management tells his parents that they are thrilled to have Jeffrey working with them and that he does a good job. Confidence gained through this employment situation led him to apply for another job at Oakland University, where he also now works with a job coach in Hillcrest Cafeteria, washing dishes behind the scenes, but also mingling with the students and coworkers happily. He'd only been there a month when staff celebrated his birthday with him baking him a purple cake, something he proudly tells anyone who will listen. He earns $12 an hour at both jobs, which has enabled him to pay a portion of his two wonderful trips, one a Disney cruise and the other trip to a water park in Ohio. He also used his earnings to pay for a class at Oakland University, realizing another lifelong dream to attend college. And that is Jeffrey. I'm sorry that he was unable to attend with us today, but I'm very grateful to be able to share his story and looking forward to seeing him on Thursday at the Your Voice, Your Value conference here in the Troy building, and I hope you can join us.
All right. Well, congratulations to Jeffrey Blake on his Director's Award. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Board Chair's report. So this is my board report for August 2023 from the Executive Committee. Our Executive Committee met at our usual fourth Thursday meeting of the month. This was July 27th. We covered two topics. We reviewed and approved the tentative agendas month's meetings, including last week's COW, tonight's general board meeting, and next week's study session, which will be focused primarily on next fiscal year's budget. The second item was the CEO's performance review and bonus, which is now complete, with the CEO's performance review and bonus now complete, we also met with our outside attorney from Dykema. This included a closed session allowed under the OMA to discuss strategy and the terms and conditions as it relates to our CEO's next contract. As the board may recall, at last month's board meeting, the board approved a 2-month extension to Dana's contract as we proceed with this renewal process. We are hopeful that she and her attorney will find this new contract and the T's and C's, the compensation plan, all acceptable. From a CMHA news and reminders perspective, the CMHA PAC, so the Political Action Committee, I recently saw some news from them that says the state association said that we were not one of the 9, we were not one of the CMS HSPs to contribute at the minimum contribution level. So they only had 9, and we were not on there. Macomb did, just FYI, to the level of at the PAC level. This may be the first time in about 15 years that we've not reached that level. So our association's PAC, while it's small in dollars compared to the health plans PAC, makes up for its small dollar amount through active and widespread advocacy and involvement across the state. So I'm hoping that we would still consider contributing one meeting stipend per year to this nonpartisan political fundraising effort. Just so you know, the 9 boards that did make it to the minimum contribution level, Sabo, Clinton, Eden, Ingham County, Huron Behavioral, Lifeways, Macomb, Mount Calm, Northeast, Saginaw, and Sanilac. So it's just a surprise. If you are not receiving any CMHA mailings, please let Sheila know, and she'll let her know what email you'd like them to mail them to, whether it's personal or OCHN, and she'll make sure they get those. Fall conference. Please reach out to Sheila if you plan to attend the 3-day Sunday to Tuesday fall conference in Traverse City, October 22nd through 24th. Its workshops provide an excellent way to gain knowledge about all aspects of the operations of a CMHSP and as a PIHP. As you know, we are both entities. It also allows you to the opportunity to informally meet and build relationships with some of our board and staff, along with other board members and other staffs, presenters, and other movers and shakers from across the state that attend this conference. That concludes my report. Any questions? Okay. On to Policy Management Committee Chair. No. Yes, sorry, Yvette.
What level do you need to contribute at in order to be?
According to the email that I saw, a minimum of $500 contribution from each entity. So for us, I don't know if that's just CMH or if it's CMH and PIHP. So worst case, it would have been, $1,000 contribution across the board.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You're welcome. And not from any one board member. We're only looking at one stipend, which is, I think everyone knows, I think it's about $90. Okay, thanks. Any other questions? No, Kaya, you have the floor.
Policy report for board meeting 8/15/2023. For the policy portion of the COW meeting, Ms. Suzanne Weiner introduced the proclamation for National Recovery Month and National Suicide Prevention Month, with the recommendation that we vote to present it to the full board at the August 15th meeting. The motion was approved by the committee. Suzanne also shared the recent and future activities of OCHN staff, as well as a summary of activities year-to-date for the CNS Healthcare Empowerment Team, formerly known as the Anti-Stigma Program. We are going through a rebranding.
Thank you. Next up would be the Finance Committee report. And part of that would be the financial update, correct?
Yeah, we appeared together at our last COW meeting and approved for recommendation the 2 contracts before you this evening. We'll have some budget prep with the staff prior to the meeting next week to discuss the budget, and that's it for tonight.
All right, thank you. Next up are the board approval items, so we'll take those. We are. So the first item would, at least on my agenda, would be the RRAC appointments. Vicki, if you want to come up and do your thing with us, thank you. This is for Mr. Dago and Ms. Bolton, right?
Correct. Good evening. I'm Vicki Suter, Director of Rights and Advocacy. The RRAC, we have 2 vacancies on the RRAC committee, the Recipient Rights Advisory Committee. 2 individuals had resigned due to life issues, so that gave us those 2 vacancies. The RRAC committee did do interviews of the 2 applicants at our August meeting. Those individuals are Ursula Bolton and James Deagle. Both of the individuals were found to be acceptable candidates to be recommended to the board, to be appointed to the RRAC. I've known Ursula for many, many years. She has been very involved for a lot of years on MSET, which is the Michigan Consumer Evaluation Team. So that's an organization that employs individuals with lived experience to do surveying for our agency as well as other agencies. She's been very involved in, all kinds of aspects of services throughout our network. And then James Deagle has been around a long time as well. In some years past, before my time as part of the Rights Department, he did serve on the Recipient Rights Advisory Committee. For those of you that might know Jack Donaldson and Dan Moran, it was kind of in that era. I did not have any actual records of his appointment and time on the RRAC, but between himself and Judy Summers, who is also a historian of many things related to community mental health, we determined that he did serve 2 terms, so he would be eligible for a 3rd term. For Ursula, this will be her first term. So we're asking that the board approve the recommendation to appoint these individuals to the RRAC.
Okay. And with that, I'm looking for a motion to approve the two
Move for approval.
Thank you, John. Is there a second?
Support.
Thank you, Adam. Is there any discussion on the two? I think they're great candidates myself. Would be my 2 cents. All right, we should do a roll call vote for this. All those.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Ms. May? Ms. Woodruff? Mr. Landsman?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. You get to share the good news with them. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next on the agenda would be the Finance Committee recommendations, the Kingsway Landscaping and the CPI contract. So, I think there was some discussion at the Committee of the Whole Board meeting. We're doing the first one, which would be the Kingsway landscaping, and that's for $45,000 for the contractor. Is there a motion to? We've got a recommendation by the Finance Committee already. Is there a motion by someone?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. Any discussion? All right, we'll do a roll call vote when you're ready. This is for Kingsway landscaping approval.
Ms. Woodruff? Ms. May? Ms. Root? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. The second item has to do with CPI, which is the Communications Professionals, Inc., and that's Building Security Services and Maintenance. And this is for a contract for $466,192.76. Do I have that right? Yes. And that's for a period that run us from August 1st through January 31st of next year, about 6 months. Is there a motion to approve this?
Well, it's for contract extension.
Yes.
The whole amount is $466. So, yeah. It's not a new contract for $466.
No, it's a contract. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It is a contract extension, but I believe it is is it just a $20,000?
Yeah, it's a $20,000 extension.
Yeah. Okay, the form on here is not correct. Sorry, that's what threw me. All right, so it's a motion to approve a contract extension
So
for
moved.
$20,000. Thank you.
Second.
Second. All right. Any discussion? I appreciate the clarification on that. We should do a roll call vote when we are ready.
Yes.
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 Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
And, hold on, Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up on the agenda would be the Policy Management Committee's recommendations for the two proclamations. So the first is the Suicide Prevention Proclamation. We covered these as well, and they were both approved with modification at our Committee of the Whole meeting last week. So is there a motion to approve the suicide prevention?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. So moved and support. Any discussion? Hearing none, a roll call vote.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Ms. May? Ms. Root? Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen? Oh, okay. Mr. Furman? Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries. Can you tell me who supported that? Okay, thank you.
Christine? Yes.
It was my understanding they were. I don't know. What's missing?
Yeah, when I looked at it, it still had citizens.
They still have citizens? Hold on a second. You have a packet in front of you.
Here.
There were two different ones that were out there with a pair of them. A plain and then one that was marked number 2. Yeah, I have it. Yeah. Okay.
Makes you better.
I just want to make sure I attached the right one.
Okay. Well, I think we'll move forward and ask for a motion to approve the recovery proclamation as well. As amended, right? From our last board meeting. Okay. So that's been motioned by Newman. Who seconded it? Woodruff? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, Sheila, when you are ready for roll call.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Furman? Yes. Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Hahn? Oh, there. Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Ms. Root? Yes. Ms. May? Yes. Ms. Woodruff?
Yes.
Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right. Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. That includes board meeting minutes, meeting minute reports for recipient rights, committee of the whole, and citizens advisory committee. And is there a motion to approve this consent agenda?
So moved.
Support.
Thank you. There's no discussion on a consent agenda, so whenever you are ready, we will do a roll call vote on this one.
Ms. Woodruff? Ms. May? Yes. Ms. Root? Yes. Ms. Newman?
Yes.
Pastor Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Furman?
Yes.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen? He's not here. Mr. Landsman?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. On to other business. I think I mentioned it during the executive or through the board chair meeting notes to let Sheila know about the fall conference. The other is from a CEO contracts perspective. Our executive committee has looked at the contracts, and so that's the new prospective proposed contract for Dana. That's been passed over with our attorney to be passed over to her and her attorney. So we are moving forward in that process. So that's all the other business that I have. Does anyone else have any other business to bring up during other business? Okay. Hearing none, we'll go to board reports. Do we have a board report? Did Dr. Hahn file any board report for RRAC? Okay. Melchiah, I guess you're up with Citizens Advisory. Thank you.
Summary committee report for OCHN CAC, July 19th, 2023. The speakers for the July meeting were Dana Fuller, Kelly Hill, Latreia Cobb, and Megan Whitington. They gave a very detailed overview of the Youth and Family Care Connect project located at the Resource and Crisis Center in the Oakland County Complex at 1200 North Telegraph in Pontiac. Christine Burke shared Dana's director report. Dana was participating in a national mental health panel discussion out of state. Christine also shared the activities for August and September. Members who had a report gave their report. Chairperson Matt Fritzen adjourned the meeting.
Thank you. Any questions? Hearing none. Sarah May, was there an SUD report? Yes, it is, because it's quarterly, isn't it?
So, the meeting for the Oversight Policy Board was originally scheduled for Wednesday, July 26th, and then it was moved to August 3rd. We didn't have a quorum, and I was unable to attend. I've searched everywhere for the minutes, but I'm unable to find them at this time, so I'll submit them once I'm provided with them.
Since they didn't have a quorum, it's likely they didn't have minutes or a meeting.
Well, it was moved to August 3rd, and I was unable to attend on that day.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. Next up on the agenda is public comment. This is our second opportunity for doing public comment. If there is anyone that wishes to make public comment, it's a 3-minute period focused on the business of the business. Is there anyone remote? No. Anyone in the audience? All right. Well, we appreciate any feedback, good, bad, or otherwise. So we'll look forward to public comment at our next meeting. Thank you. Moving on, it's to our director's report. But she's out, so.
She's out, but you have a copy of the report in your packet and in front of you.
Yep.
So if you have any questions pertaining to the packet, please email Dana directly. She's also attending virtually, just so you know.
Well, hi, Dana. All right. So with that, we'll move on to board member comment. Is there anyone that would like to do board member comment? And we'll start in that direction, go around the table. Adam? Sarah?
No comment, thank you.
Christina? No, Kaya?
I just want to briefly say that there was a determination made by the Department of Health and Human Services that peers that work in the system, the CMA system, were no longer able to use telehealth to provide services to the people that they serve. There was quite a uproar about it, and I'm happy to report that that has been changed, and they are able to resume their peer services via telehealth. So it just goes to show if you make noise enough, you can get some change going. Thank you.
Thank you. John? Pastor? Okay. Yvette?
Even though Jeffrey Blake is not here, I would just like to congratulate him on winning the award and being persistent in pursuing the job of his dreams.
Okay, thank you. So that just leaves me. So next week we have our board study session on the fiscal year 2024. Yeah, 2024. I can't believe we're there already. Regarding the budget. So I have a few comments regarding that study session. And it's primarily related to the fund sources. So from a Medicaid revenue fund source perspective, so the number of enrollees by type, so TANF's temporary aid for needy families, deaf, aged, and blind, Healthy Michigan, et cetera, determine what our Medicaid revenue inflows are. So the revenue that we have primarily coming in. Approximately, at least from what I read in Cranes a few weeks ago, there were 90,000 persons in Oakland County that are covered by Medicaid. We don't provide services to all those folks. We provide services to roughly 27,000 persons, but our revenue, our income primarily, is driven from the persons that are qualified in Medicaid, so the 90,000. During the pandemic, we had added about 15,000 to the Medicaid. Prior to that, we only had 75,000 that were enrolled. So again, that helped increase what we made. That helped us in terms of outflows and providing services to the members the persons served across our county and others for not only MI, but the mental illness, developmentally disabled, children with severe emotional disturbance, and of course, people with substance use issues as well. So the questions I have now that we're at mid-August, and I hope we cover these during our budget review, is do we have a sense now from CHAMPS, so that's the enrollment system that the state uses, as to how many persons in Oakland County might now be enrolled? What's that drop or decline rate been over the last couple of months? So how fast are people coming down because they're now required to recertify since that recertification process began? And at the rate that's going, do we have an idea of what we should be modeling our budget on? Should that be on the 75,000? Should it be on 80? Should it be something less than 75,000 for those that fail to certify adequately? So these are the kind of questions that I'd be asking in our budget. So I'm hoping we have some line of sight into that. And that will help us prepare for the fiscal 24. I'd almost much rather we're more conservative going into the new fiscal year and say, providers, this is how much you have to work with, and then be surprised later on that there's a little bit more for them to work with, rather than have to find a way to cut them early in the year or mid-year. It's a little bit harder once you started delivering services to folks to cut things back. The same thing goes from an Oakland County revenue source perspective. I know we've asked for an increase, and I was just trying to find out where we are with our feedback on the revenue increase ask that we have and how that's going. And then lastly, the PA2 revenue fund source, which is also a third pretty big resource for us for funding. So I'm just trying to understand if we're going to see an increase, a decrease, or roughly no change to the PA2 revenues. And the reason I'm asking is, again, we're a month and a half away from the end of this fiscal year. We tend to report our monthly financials in arrears, because it is what happened, but we also keep an eye out on what's going on in the future. So I'm just hoping we have a sense of what's going on so that we can protect our reserves, build them up if we need to, because we're going to have to go through some true-ups with our providers. And again, we're having this discussion about the fiscal year 24 budget, revenues, inflows, et cetera. And that will drive what we have available for our providers to deliver quality services to all those that need it. So, all right, so those are my questions that I'm hoping, and I sent them to Dana, and I'm sure she'll forward them on. But I'm hoping we'll cover some of that, as well as how do we plan to support the providers across the 4 service lines for this upcoming year. So I appreciate you guys in advance for all the work that you do, all the planning, all the modeling, et cetera. It's not easy. I know my questions sound easy, but the answers are very hard for coming up with what these are and trying to make educated guesses. So I want to take a minute and thank the staff that is working on the budget so diligently. So I appreciate. I'll say it now in case it doesn't sound like I'm so appreciative when we're in the heat of walking through the budget spend. So thank you guys. Thank you all. That concludes my comments. And at this point, we've exhausted the board agenda, so we're in adjournment.